Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the palace balcony, her long, silver-blue hair flowing in the gentle breeze of Deathware's twin suns. Below her, the city sprawled in geometric perfection, towers of glowing crystal rising into the sky. She had walked these streets countless times, but today everything seemed heavier, more oppressive. The day of her marriage had arrived, a union that was not of her choosing but demanded by the High Council of Deathware. She closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. As the only daughter of the ruling family, her life had always been a series of expectations, protocols, and duties. From the moment she was born, every step she took was guided by advisors and nobles who spoke in measured tones about alliances, strategy, and the future of their planet. She had learned to obey, to hide her feelings, to wear the mask of the perfect princess. But beneath it all, Lyra longed for freedom, for the chance to choose her own path. The marriage was meant to secure Deathware's place among the stars. A war loomed on the outer borders of their galaxy, a conflict that could destroy entire worlds if Deathware stood alone. The High Council had decreed that the princess must marry, forming an alliance that would strengthen their position. Lyra had expected the usual, the son of a noble alien family, someone with the proper heritage, strength, and status. She had prepared herself for the ceremony, rehearsed her gestures, memorized the formal words. Yet nothing could have prepared her for the sight that awaited her in the grand hall. The hall was a magnificent display of Deathware architecture. Pillars of polished obsidian stretched toward the ceiling, illuminated by floating lights that cast a soft, golden glow. The air shimmered with faint energy fields, a subtle sign of the advanced technology integrated into every corner of the palace. Nobles and council members filled the seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and judgment. All eyes turned toward the central stage, where the future of Deathware was about to be decided. Lyra walked down the long aisle, her steps echoing softly against the crystalline floor. Her gown shimmered like the surface of a frozen lake, embroidered with patterns that represented her family's legacy. She felt the weight of every gaze upon her, every whisper of speculation. The High Council had warned her repeatedly, composure was essential. Any sign of doubt or fear could weaken her position, damage the alliance, and place her people at risk. When she reached the stage, her breath caught. There, standing in the light, was the Groom. He was not alien, he was human. The murmurs that rippled through the hall were instant and unmistakable. Humans were considered primitive on Deathware. Their technology was limited, their species young and fragile compared to the long-lived, highly advanced aliens of the Council. To see one chosen as a partner for the princess was shocking, even scandalous. Yet there he stood, tall and calm, his posture straight, eyes steady, and a small, respectful nod directed at her. Lyra's first instinct was disbelief. She studied him carefully. His skin was fair, his hair dark and ordinary by their standards. He wore a formal uniform of human design, simple and unadorned, but it somehow suited him. There was no fear, no hesitation, only a quiet confidence that made her pause. Who was he? How had a human come to be chosen for this position of honor, for this marriage that could decide the fate of her world? A member of the council stepped forward and addressed the assembly in the resonant tones that echoed through the hall. High Council decree has been fulfilled. The Groom is selected according to merit and the necessity of our planet. Let the ceremony proceed. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, clear, and carried a sincerity that caught everyone off guard. Princess Lyra, I am honored to stand before you. I do not claim to fully understand your ways, but I am ready to serve and to learn to protect Deathware and its people. There was no arrogance in his words, no attempt to impress through alien traditions or displays of strength. Just honesty, and somehow it made her heart stir in a way she had not expected. The council's chief advisor, a tall alien with translucent skin and eyes that shimmered like liquid gold, approached her. Princess, he said, his tone firm, this human Ethan has proven himself in ways no alien could. His intellect, his courage, and his understanding of cooperation have earned him the Council's trust. Do not let your prejudice blind you. This union is necessary for the survival of our people. She had been raised to respect protocol, to obey, but not necessarily to embrace it. Yet something about Ethan, the calm determination in his eyes, the way he carried himself without arrogance, demanded attention. She wondered how he had survived the Council's tests, the trials that were designed to challenge even the most formidable of alien warriors. The ceremony began in earnest. Lyra and Ethan stood on the ceremonial platform, surrounded by the symbols of Deathware's history. crystals pulsing with energy, ancient scrolls of law and prophecy, and the intricate patterns of their royal heritage etched into the walls. The officiant, a venerable alien priest, spoke in melodic tones, invoking the blessings of the ancestors and the protection of the planet. Lyra watched Ethan closely. Every gesture he made, every word he spoke was measured yet natural. He was learning quickly, adapting to customs that were foreign and complex. His respect for her people was evident in the way he acknowledged the council, bowed to the elders, and spoke to the citizens present. There was no false pretense, no attempt to dominate the ceremony through alien traditions he did not understand. He was himself, and somehow that was enough. As the ceremony progressed, Lyra's astonishment began to shift into something more subtle, curiosity. She began to observe him not as a human, not as a representative of a lesser species, but as an individual with his own strengths, his own mind. She noticed the way he moved with careful confidence, how he answered questions thoughtfully, and how he listened to the council and the people with genuine attention. There was something in him that spoke of potential, of courage that transcended species. By the time the ceremony concluded, the murmurs of shock had quieted. The council members, initially skeptical, began to nod in approval. The alliance was no longer just a political maneuver. It was a promise of something new, something unpredictable but full of possibility. When the formalities ended, Lyra found herself walking beside Ethan through the palace gardens, the soft glow of the twin suns casting long shadows on the crystalline paths. She could still hardly believe what had happened, yet she felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of expectation remained, but now it was accompanied by a glimmer of curiosity. What could this human offer? What could they learn from each other? Ethan spoke first, his voice quiet, careful. "Princess Lyra, I know this is unusual. I know I may not be what you expected, but I want to do right by you, by your people, and by Deathwere. I hope in time I can earn your trust." Just a determination to rise to the occasion, to meet a challenge that even the most experienced aliens might have faltered at. Somehow, that was reassuring. I don't understand how you passed the council's trials," she admitted softly. "Many aliens have tried and few have succeeded. How did you manage it?" "I cannot match your strength or longevity, but I learned to observe, to think ahead, and to find solutions others might overlook. Sometimes the best way to face a challenge is not with force, but with understanding and creativity." Most beings relied on raw power, tradition, or intimidation. Ethan relied on something different, something human yet undeniably effective. The two walked in silence for a moment, the gardens stretching endlessly around them. The air was filled with the soft hum of energy fields, and the scent of alien flowers drifted faintly through the air. Lyra felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. The future was uncertain, but perhaps it was not entirely bleak. By the end of the day, the princess realized that while she had been shocked, confused, and even wary, a seed of curiosity had been planted. Who was this human, really? What could he bring to her world that no alien could? And perhaps in the vast possibilities of the future, there was room for something more than duty, room for understanding, partnership, and maybe even friendship. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the palace, Lyra knew that her life had changed forever. The path ahead was unknown, filled with challenges and surprises, but for the first time in her life, she felt a flicker of hope. Ethan, the human groom, had arrived in Deathwere as an outsider, a curiosity and perhaps a mistake. But already he had begun to show that he was something much more than the council had predicted. He was a possibility, a promise of something new, and Princess Lyra, despite her initial shock, could not deny the stirrings of intrigue that his presence had awakened. And so, with the stars rising over Deathwere and the palace filled with quiet murmurs of astonishment, a new chapter began for the princess, for the human, and for the future of an entire world. The morning after the ceremony, the palace of Deathwere seemed quieter than usual. The city outside sparkled under the twin suns, but inside the halls, Princess Lyra moved with a careful awareness, her thoughts tangled between duty and curiosity. The previous day's shock, the revelation that her groom was human, still lingered in her mind. She had never imagined that a human could stand beside her in this role, and yet here he was, calm and composed, as if he belonged. Ethan, the human groom, had spent the night reviewing the protocols he had learned in just a few short days. Despite the vast differences between humans and the aliens of Deathwere, he had adapted quickly, observing customs, remembering formalities, and practicing the gestures expected of him. But it wasn't enough to simply follow instructions. He had to prove that he could meet the challenges of this world, and that meant demonstrating intelligence, courage, and the ability to understand the alien perspective. Lyra found herself walking toward the training grounds, curiosity nudging her forward. The council had arranged a series of trials for Ethan, not as punishment, but as a measure of trust. These were the trials of Deathwere, designed to test strength, skill, strategy, and morality. She had watched previous challengers, elite warriors and brilliant minds, fail under the pressure. Ethan, she wondered, could he truly survive these tests? The training grounds were vast, a blend of natural terrain and artificial enhancements. Crystal towers, energy barriers, and holographic simulations created a complex environment that tested every skill imaginable. Lyra's advisors had warned her to keep a respectful distance, but she found herself stepping closer, her eyes fixed on the human who had turned her world upside down. Ethan approached the first trial with careful steps. The task was deceptively simple: navigate a series of moving platforms suspended over a simulated chasm. Most aliens relied on agility and strength, leaping confidently from one platform to another. Ethan paused, studying the movement patterns, calculating the timing. Then, with precise steps and measured jumps, he crossed the chasm successfully. Lyra's eyes widened. It was not raw power that had allowed him to succeed, but observation, patience, and calculated decision-making, a different kind of strength that the aliens rarely valued. The next trial was a test of intellect. A holographic puzzle appeared, shifting constantly, designed to challenge even the brightest minds of Deathwere. Symbols, codes, and alien languages interwove in a complex pattern that would confuse anyone unfamiliar with their systems. Ethan studied the puzzle, analyzing patterns and seeking logical connections. He made mistakes at first, yet he learned quickly, adapting to each shift in the hologram. Step by step, he solved the puzzle, earning quiet murmurs of admiration from the onlookers. Lyra noticed a subtle change in the council's demeanor. Initially skeptical and judgmental, they now whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing at Ethan with something close to respect. The human's success was unusual, even extraordinary. He relied on traits the aliens often overlooked: patience, flexibility, creativity, and empathy. He was proving that humanity, though considered primitive, had strengths the council had not anticipated. The third trial was the most dangerous. A simulated battlefield appeared, filled with energy constructs representing hostile forces. Ethan was given a weapon, unfamiliar to him, and instructed to defend a group of holographic civilians. The aliens watching expected chaos. Humans were not warriors in the traditional sense of Deathwere, and surely he would fail. But Ethan approached with calm determination. He observed the battlefield, anticipating the attacks, predicting the patterns. He moved strategically, positioning himself to protect the civilians while conserving energy and using minimal force. He adapted quickly to the weapon, using it effectively without relying solely on brute strength. By the end of the trial, not a single holographic civilian was harmed, and he had neutralized all threats. The council, who had doubted his ability, now looked on with genuine astonishment. Lyra felt a mixture of admiration and surprise. Each trial revealed more about Ethan than she had expected. He was not a mere human, fragile and inexperienced. He was intelligent, resourceful, and brave in ways that went beyond physical power. Slowly, her initial shock began to transform into curiosity and respect. She wanted to understand him, to see how he approached the world and the challenges it presented. After the trials, the two walked through the palace gardens, a quiet moment amid the chaos of preparation and ceremony. Ethan glanced at Lyra, his expression calm but thoughtful. "Princess Lyra," he said, "I know my success may seem unusual. I am still learning your customs, your ways, and your expectations. But I want you to know that I am committed, not just to the council or your people, but to you as well. I will do everything I can to honor this alliance and our partnership." "Ethan," she said softly, "your approach is different. I admit I expected someone else, someone stronger, more like us. But you have shown skill, intelligence, and patience. I am surprised. But I have something else: adaptability, empathy, and the ability to see problems from a perspective that may differ from yours. I hope in time that will be enough." She began to wonder if a human perspective, so different from her own, could bring new solutions to the challenges facing Deathwere. As the days passed, Ethan continued to adapt, learning quickly from every interaction, every observation. He asked questions, listened carefully, and engaged with the people of Deathwere in ways that the council found surprising. Whereas many aliens approached problems with pride and rigidity, Ethan relied on collaboration and understanding. He was learning the language, the customs, and the intricate social rules of her people, but he was also bringing his own humanity into every action. Lyra found herself drawn to these interactions. She observed how he treated palace staff with respect, how he listened to children and elders alike, and how he approached conflicts not with aggression, but with reason. There was a warmth in his presence that softened the formal rigidity of the palace. Slowly, she began to realize that he was not only surviving in this world, but thriving. One evening, Lyra found herself walking alone with Ethan near the palace's energy lake, a shimmering body of water that reflected the twin suns. "Ethan," she said hesitantly, "how do you remain so calm, even when everything here is so overwhelming?" "I cannot change everything at once, and I do not expect to know everything immediately. But I can learn, adapt, and do my best. That is all any of us can do." Yet here was a human, considered weak by their standards, demonstrating qualities that even the oldest and most experienced council members seemed to admire. Over the following weeks, Lyra and Ethan spent more time together, discussing strategies for the future, the challenges facing Deathwere, and the ways in which humans and aliens could work together. Lyra found herself questioning old assumptions, considering ideas she had never entertained before. She began to see Ethan not as a shocking anomaly, but as a bridge between two worlds. One afternoon, a message arrived from the outer borders of Deathwere. A faction of rogue forces threatened a nearby colony, testing the planet's defenses. The council was quick to respond, but their strategies relied heavily on conventional tactics, tactics that Ethan observed carefully. "Your approach could be improved," he said, pointing out alternative strategies that incorporated flexibility, prediction, and collaboration between units. At first, the council hesitated, but when they saw the logic in his plan, they allowed him to assist. The mission was a success. The rogue faction was neutralized without unnecessary destruction, and the colony remained safe. Lyra watched as the council members nodded in approval, their respect for the human Groom growing with each passing day. Ethan had not only survived the trials, but had now demonstrated his worth in a real-world challenge, protecting the people of Deathwere through intelligence and collaboration rather than force alone. That evening, Lyra found herself walking beside him once more. "You have done more than I expected," she admitted. "Not just in the trials, but here, in protecting our people. I cannot deny that I am beginning to understand the value you bring." The world she had known, rigid, ordered, and predictable, was changing, and a human stood at the center of that change. She realized that this union, once forced upon her by decree, could evolve into something meaningful, something that transcended politics and tradition. As the twin suns set over the crystalline city, casting a golden glow across the palace, Lyra and Ethan stood side by side, looking toward the horizon. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and surprises, but for the first time, Lyra felt a spark of hope. The human beside her was not just a shock, not just a curiosity. He was a possibility, a partner, and perhaps, in time, a friend. And in the quiet moments of reflection, Lyra understood that her life, once dictated entirely by duty, was beginning to open to new experiences, new perspectives, and the promise of something greater. The story of the alien princess and the human Groom had only just begun, and the days ahead would reveal the true strength, courage, and partnership that could unite their worlds in ways no one had imagined. The following days in the Palace of Deathwere were filled with a tense mixture of anticipation and preparation. The council had accepted Ethan's presence, but many nobles and citizens still whispered doubts. A human, after all, was unlike any being they had trusted before. Yet, as Ethan continued to demonstrate intelligence, courage, and respect for their ways, the skepticism slowly began to fade. Lyra found herself watching him closely, a mixture of curiosity and admiration building with every passing hour. She noticed small details, the way he listened to others without interrupting, the patience he showed when learning the complex alien language, and how he approached every task, no matter how menial, with diligence and care. Unlike most beings she had known, Ethan treated everyone equally, from palace guards to scholars. His presence brought a subtle warmth to the grand halls, and even the staff began to speak of him with quiet respect. One morning, the council summoned Ethan for a private audience. Lyra followed, her curiosity too strong to resist. The chamber was circular, walls lined with floating crystal panels that displayed tactical maps of Deathware and its neighboring systems. The High Council stood before them, their expressions serious. "Human," the chief advisor said, his voice firm yet measured, "your success in the trials has been noted, but a new test awaits. The security of Deathware is not guaranteed by skill alone. A rogue faction has grown in strength at the outer colonies. They seek to destabilize our systems and challenge the authority of the Council. You are to join the Council's strategists and assist in planning the defense. This will test your ability to think, adapt, and work under pressure." "I will do my best to contribute." He suggested patrol routes that combined stealth with efficiency, early warning systems using human-designed sensors, and communication networks that minimized delays and errors. At first, some council members resisted his ideas. Humans were considered unpredictable. Their approaches could seem unorthodox. But Ethan's reasoning was logical, clear, and effective. Slowly, one by one, the council began to see the value in his perspective. Lyra felt a growing pride. This human, this being from a distant and supposedly inferior world, was proving that he could meet challenges that had baffled even the most brilliant aliens. Over the next few days, preparations intensified. Soldiers trained in the fields, engineers fortified defenses, and the council coordinated communication between colonies. Ethan worked tirelessly, often staying late into the night with Lyra by his side. He taught her aspects of human strategy, explaining how observation, flexibility, and creativity could complement Deathware's advanced technology. Lyra found his ideas refreshing, often challenging her assumptions and inspiring her to think beyond tradition. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Lyra spoke softly. "Ethan, I did not expect to see things this way. Humans, we have always considered you fragile, unpredictable, and yet here you are guiding our defenses, teaching me things I never thought of." "I am not perfect, Princess. I make mistakes, and I do not claim to understand everything about your world. But I believe that differences can be a strength. By combining what I know with what your people know, we can face challenges more effectively. Strength comes in many forms, not just physical power or tradition." She had been raised to value certain qualities above all else: longevity, strength, and status. Ethan had none of these, and yet he possessed a courage and wisdom that surpassed many of her own people. Slowly, the seeds of trust and respect began to grow into something stronger, a sense of partnership that neither duty nor decree could dictate. The day of the first reconnaissance mission arrived. Ethan accompanied a team of elite scouts to the outer colonies, a region of harsh terrain and unpredictable weather patterns. Lyra insisted on observing, though she remained at a safe distance, anxious yet curious. The team navigated rocky canyons, energy storms, and sudden ambush simulations designed by the Council to test readiness. Ethan's calmness and quick thinking proved invaluable. When a sudden energy storm blocked their path, he directed the team to safer ground, using human logic combined with Deathware's technology. When a simulation of an ambush appeared, he coordinated defensive positions, communicated with scouts, and predicted the movement of enemies before the Council's systems could detect them. By the end of the mission, the team returned without a single casualty, their confidence in Ethan's abilities growing with each step. Lyra approached him as the scouts dispersed. "I am beginning to understand," she said quietly. "Your perspective, it is not like ours, yet it works. You think differently, and it makes all the difference." "I am learning from your people as well, Princess. I cannot claim to know everything about Deathware, but together we can adapt, protect, and improve. That is why I must understand both sides, yours and mine." The Council relied heavily on Ethan's insights, integrating his strategies into their defense systems. Lyra, observing him, realized that the human's abilities went beyond intellect. He inspired confidence and cooperation among her people. Where fear and uncertainty had existed, hope and determination now took root. One evening, during a strategy session, the chief advisor addressed both Ethan and Lyra. "You have proven your value, human. Your ideas and actions have saved countless lives, but the rogue faction will not stop. The next phase will require leadership, courage, and partnership. Are you ready for this?" "I will do whatever it takes to protect Deathware and its people. I am committed to this alliance and to working alongside Princess Lyra." He was a partner, someone whose strengths complemented her own, someone who could face challenges that neither of them could tackle alone. The next morning, an urgent message arrived. The rogue faction had launched a direct attack on a key colony. The council mobilized immediately, and Ethan worked alongside the commanders to coordinate a defense. The battle was intense. Energy blasts lit the skies, alien ships swooped through the clouds, and the ground shook with the impact of advanced weaponry. Yet through it all, Ethan remained calm. He directed reinforcements, identified weaknesses in the enemy's approach, and coordinated evacuation efforts where necessary. Lyra watched him in awe, her respect for his courage and intelligence growing with every decision he made. The humans' unconventional strategies, combined with Deathware's technology, turned the tide of battle. The rogue faction was repelled, and the colony remained safe. When the dust settled, Lyra approached Ethan. "You have done more than anyone could expect," she said softly. "Not just in planning, but in action. You inspire people to act, to think, and to trust. I did not expect to see this in a human. That is what keeps people safe." He had shown her that qualities like empathy, intelligence, and flexibility were just as powerful as strength, speed, or tradition. As the twin suns set once more over Deathware, Lyra and Ethan walked together through the palace gardens. The air was filled with a quiet serenity, a brief pause in the ongoing challenges they faced. Lyra felt a growing sense of partnership and trust. She began to believe that together they could overcome any obstacle, human or alien. The palace, once a place of rigid tradition and expectation, now felt alive with possibility. The princess and the human groom had faced trials, battles, and doubts, yet their partnership had endured. Lyra realized that the future of Deathware might depend not only on technology or power, but on the courage to embrace differences, the willingness to learn from one another, and the strength found in unity. And so, as night fell over the crystalline towers, a new chapter unfolded for Princess Lyra and Ethan. Their journey was far from over. Challenges awaited, tests of courage and trust would come, and the rogue faction remained a constant threat. But for the first time, Lyra felt a deep confidence, not just in the human at her side, but in the possibility of a future shaped by partnership, understanding, and the unexpected strengths of humanity. In the quiet of the palace gardens, under the light of Deathware's twin moons, she finally allowed herself a small smile. The human beside her was no longer a shock, no longer a curiosity. He was a partner, a guide, and perhaps in time, a friend she could rely on, as together they prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead. And in that moment, Lyra understood that the true trial was not merely the battles or the strategies. It was the courage to see beyond expectation, to embrace the unexpected, and to recognize the strength that comes in many forms. The story of the alien princess and the human groom continued, their bond growing stronger with each trial, each challenge, and each moment of shared understanding. The future of Deathware depended on them, and the galaxy would soon witness the power of a partnership forged not by decree alone, but by courage, respect, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. The calm that had settled over Deathware after the last skirmish was deceptive. Though the rogue faction had been repelled, the council warned that their attacks would only grow stronger. The outer colonies were vulnerable, and any lapse in strategy could cost countless lives. Princess Lyra felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her more heavily than ever, but she was no longer alone. Ethan had proven himself, not just in intellect or strategy, but in courage, leadership, and understanding. Together, they formed a bond that went beyond duty, something that gave both of them strength in uncertain times. One morning, the palace received urgent reports. Sensors had detected a massive fleet approaching the outer colonies, far larger and more organized than any previous attack. The council convened an emergency meeting in the central chamber, its crystalline walls humming with energy and holographic displays showing the approaching threat. Lyra and Ethan were present, standing side by side. The atmosphere was tense, the council's voices sharp with concern. "This fleet is unlike any we have faced," the chief advisor said, his translucent skin shimmering in the light. "They are coordinated, advanced, and well-armed. If they reach the colonies, our defenses alone may not be enough. We need a combination of direct engagement and diversion," he said. "Our primary defense should protect the colonies, but we can also use smaller, faster units to intercept and disrupt their formation. We cannot rely solely on raw power. We need strategy, adaptation, and coordination across all levels." They were used to conventional tactics, overwhelmed the enemy with superior firepower. Yet Ethan's approach, though unconventional, made sense. Slowly, the council began to agree, incorporating his suggestions into the defense plan. Lyra observed silently, impressed by his clarity and confidence. The human Groom, once an unexpected presence in her world, was now shaping its very survival. The fleet arrived at the outer colonies within hours, a massive formation of alien ships bristling with energy weapons. Panic threatened to spread among the colonists, but Ethan remained composed. He coordinated with the commanders, directing ships to strategic positions, guiding defense units through complex maneuvers, and anticipating the enemy's movements with remarkable precision. Lyra followed him closely, learning from his methods and gaining insight into his unique perspective. The battle was fierce. Energy blasts tore through the skies, and explosions rocked the surface of the colonies. Despite the chaos, Ethan moved with calm determination, making decisions that saved countless lives. When a group of ships threatened to breach the defenses near a civilian zone, he acted quickly, deploying a small unit to intercept them while redirecting reinforcements to secure the colony. His actions were swift, effective, and life-saving. Lyra found herself awestruck. The human she had once viewed with skepticism was now leading the defense with courage, intelligence, and empathy. He was not relying on brute force, nor on tradition, but on creativity, observation, and collaboration. Every decision he made reflected his understanding of both strategy and humanity, the kind of insight that could change the course of a battle and inspire those around him. By the end of the engagement, the fleet had been repelled. The colonies remained intact, and casualties were minimal. The council members, who had doubted Ethan from the beginning, now acknowledged his value with quiet respect. Lyra felt a deep sense of pride and relief. The human beside her had not only survived the trial of battle, but had excelled in a way that few could have imagined. After the battle, Lyra and Ethan returned to the palace, weary but unbroken. They walked through the gardens, the twin moons casting silver light over the crystalline pathways. The air was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just faced. "You were incredible today," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying both admiration and genuine warmth. "I have never seen anyone handle a crisis like that, human or alien. You inspire people to act, to think, and to trust." She realized that Ethan's presence was changing her, challenging her assumptions, and helping her see the value of qualities she had never prioritized before. Courage, empathy, and intelligence, traits that sometimes went unnoticed among her people, were just as important, if not more so, than strength, tradition, or status. The next days were filled with planning, training, and rebuilding. Though the immediate threat had been repelled, the council knew the rogue faction would return, more determined than ever. Lyra and Ethan worked tirelessly together, studying intelligence reports, designing new defense strategies, and preparing the outer colonies for any eventuality. Their collaboration strengthened not only the defenses, but also their bond. They learned to anticipate each other's thoughts, communicate silently through subtle gestures, and rely on one another in moments of uncertainty. One evening, as they reviewed plans in the observation tower, Lyra spoke quietly. "Ethan, I used to think humans were weak, unpredictable, and incapable of leadership on this scale. But you have proven me wrong. Your courage, your intelligence, your patience, it is remarkable. That is what allows people to survive, to thrive, and to grow stronger together." The following week brought another challenge. Reports indicated that the rogue faction had captured a supply convoy vital to the colony's survival. The council debated conventional military response, but Ethan suggested a different approach. He proposed a small, precise strike team to infiltrate the convoy, retrieve the supplies, and avoid unnecessary conflict. Lyra agreed, trusting his judgment. The mission was risky. The convoy was heavily guarded, and failure could mean disaster. Yet Ethan's planning was meticulous. He studied patrol patterns, assessed the terrain, and coordinated timing with the precision of a seasoned strategist. Lyra observed him as he briefed the strike team, explaining every step calmly and clearly. His confidence inspired those around him, and the team trusted him completely. The operation succeeded beyond expectations. The supplies were recovered, and the rogue faction was left confused and disorganized. Not a single life was lost, and the colonies received the resources they desperately needed. Lyra could not hide her amazement. Ethan had turned a dangerous situation into a triumph, relying not on brute force but on intelligence, observation, and careful planning. As they returned to the palace, Lyra walked beside him quietly. "You have changed everything," she said softly. Your presence, your perspective. It has shown me that strength comes in many forms, not just what we once believed. It is not about one of us being stronger, but about working together to overcome challenges that neither could face alone. She also realized that her feelings toward him had begun to shift, from doubt and suspicion to trust, admiration, and something deeper, an emotional bond that grew stronger with every shared challenge. The days that followed were filled with preparation for the next phase of defense. Ethan and Lyra continued to work closely, their partnership deepening with each passing moment. The rogue faction remained a looming threat, but the princess no longer faced it alone. She had a partner, a strategist, and a friend whose courage and intelligence complemented her own. One evening, as they stood on the palace balcony overlooking the glowing city, Lyra spoke quietly. "Ethan, I do not know what the future holds, but I know that I am no longer afraid. With you beside me, I feel stronger, wiser, and more capable than I ever have. We are stronger together than apart, and that is what will see us through the days ahead." Yet for the first time, she felt confident, not just in their survival, but in the strength of the bond they had formed, the courage they shared, and the extraordinary potential of their partnership. And so, as the palace lights shimmered in the cool night air, Lyra and Ethan stood together, united in purpose, trust, and determination. The rogue faction might return, and challenges might grow greater, but they were ready. The alien princess and the human groom, once an improbable match, were now partners in the truest sense. Together they would face the trials ahead, their bond a symbol of courage, understanding, and the remarkable strength found when two worlds meet and work as one. The final warning came at dawn. Across Deathwar's skies, the early light of the twin suns was broken by a shadow unlike any before. Sensors across the planet activated at once, their alerts echoing through the palace. A massive force had arrived at the edge of the system, not a scattered fleet, not a rogue group, but a unified armada. This was the true enemy behind all previous attacks, a coalition that believed Deathwar was weak, divided, and ready to fall. Princess Lyra stood in the command chamber, her posture steady despite the storm of information flooding the displays. Around her, council members spoke urgently, some with fear, others with anger. This force was larger than anything Deathwar had ever faced. Ethan stood beside her, silent, studying the data. "They are not testing us anymore," the chief advisor said. "They are here to conquer. That is where they are strongest." He paused, then continued. "So we don't give them that. We follow his strategy." The enemy advanced confidently, believing Deathwar would fall quickly. They were wrong. When the first strike came, it hit empty space. Their powerful weapons met nothing but false signals and drifting decoys. Meanwhile, small Deathwar units slipped past their lines, disrupting supply routes, disabling command ships, and vanishing before retaliation could follow. Ethan coordinated everything. From the command center, he watched patterns, predicted reactions, and adjusted plans in real time. He did not shout. He did not panic. His voice remained steady, guiding commanders with clear instructions and calm assurance. Lyra stayed beside him, issuing orders, supporting his decisions, and ensuring the people of Deathwar followed the plan without fear. For the first time in their history, Deathwar was not relying on overwhelming power. They were relying on intelligence. The enemy grew confused. Their massive fleet, designed for domination, struggled against an opponent that refused to fight as expected. Their commanders argued. Their formations broke. Then the enemy made their mistake. They focused everything on the capital. "They think if they break Deathwar's heart, the rest will fall," a commander said. Ethan nodded. "That's what we want them to think." Energy fields locked entire sections of the fleet in place. Systems failed as carefully planted disruptions took effect. At the same time, Deathwar's forces struck key command vessels with precise force, disabling leadership without destroying entire fleets. The battle did not last long after that. Without coordination, the enemy retreated. Some surrendered. Others fled the system entirely. Deathwar had won, not through superior weapons, but through human strategy. Silence filled the command chamber as the last enemy signal disappeared. Then slowly the room erupted, not in cheers, but in quiet awe. The chief advisor turned to Ethan. "You have done what no one thought possible." Together, Ethan stood beside Lyra, no longer viewed as an outsider. The council addressed the people. "Let it be known," the chief advisor declared, "that humanity has proven its worth not through force, but through wisdom, courage, and unity. This alliance is no longer political. It is a bond of trust." "Once I was forced into this union," she said softly. I was afraid, I was angry, I thought my future was being taken from me. Human ideas were shared openly. New defense systems were designed using both alien technology and human adaptability. Training focused not just on strength, but on thinking, cooperation, and empathy. Other worlds took notice. Where once Deathware had been seen as distant and rigid, it was now respected, and humanity, once dismissed as weak, was now welcomed as a powerful ally across the stars. Lyra and Ethan often walked together through the palace gardens, no longer bound by duty alone. One evening, as the sun set, Lyra spoke quietly. "Do you regret coming here?" It was built through trust, shared hardship, and understanding, and that made it strong. The galaxy would remember the battle for Deathware not as a story of conquest, but as a turning point, a moment when strength was redefined, when a human stood among aliens and proved that courage, intelligence, and compassion could change the fate of worlds. The alien princess who had once been shocked by her groom now stood proudly beside him, and the human, once considered insignificant, became a symbol of hope far beyond his own species. Together, they did not just defend a planet. They changed the way the galaxy saw humanity forever.